The earliest hours of dawn break over the horizon. While most of the world sleeps, a select few rise to claim the most precious hours of the day. Ancient wisdom meets modern science in what may be the most transformative practice available to us: the morning routine. The Stoics, those ancient Greek and Roman philosophers who valued virtue, reason, and resilience above all else, understood something that high performers across history have discovered independently. Victory over the day begins with victory over the morning. This is not just another productivity hack. This is about building the psychological fortress that the Stoics called the inner citadel, a state of mind impervious to the chaos of the world. And it begins in those quiet moments when you first open your eyes. As Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and Stoic philosopher, wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm?" Today, we'll explore how the wisdom of Stoicism can transform your mornings, and by extension, your entire existence. We'll examine specific practices, mental frameworks, and routines that have been tested across millennia, from the porticos of Athens to the boardrooms of Silicon Valley. The path to an unshakable mind begins before the rest of the world wakes up. Let's discover it together. Part 1. The philosophy of the morning. The Stoic view of time. The Stoics had a unique relationship with time. They didn't view it, as we often do, as an infinite resource to be spent casually. To them, time was the most precious commodity, the only truly non-renewable resource. Seneca, in his essay on the shortness of life, admonished, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested." This perspective transforms the morning hours. Those early moments aren't just another part of the day. They're your most valuable asset, untouched by the demands of others, uncorrupted by the fatigue that accumulates as hours pass. The morning represents potential in its purest form. This is why the Stoics place such emphasis on how one begins the day. They understood that conquering the morning meant conquering yourself, and that is the first step toward conquering anything else. When you wake, before necessity forces you to, you reclaim agency. You demonstrate to yourself that you act from internal values rather than external pressures. This simple act, choosing to rise rather than being forced to rise, is the first victory of the day, a microcosm of the Stoic principle of volition. The dichotomy of control. Central to Stoic philosophy is the dichotomy of control, understanding what is within our power and what isn't. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and ended it as one of history's greatest philosophers, opened his manual of Stoic guidance with this principle: some things are within our control, while others are not. Within our control are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our control are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. The morning is uniquely positioned as the time when we have the most control. The world has not yet imposed its will upon us. The phone has not yet bombarded us with notifications. Colleagues have not yet made demands. Family responsibilities have not yet taken precedence. In these golden hours, we face the purest expression of the dichotomy of control. What will you do with this time that is wholly yours? Will you surrender it to distractions, or will you harness it toward the cultivation of virtue and excellence? The Stoic morning routine is built on this foundation. Use the time when you have the most agency to strengthen your capacity for virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, the cardinal virtues of Stoic philosophy. By winning the morning through deliberate practice of these virtues, you set in motion a day where external events might unfold beyond your control, but your responses remain firmly within your command, preparing the mind for battle. The Stoics saw daily life as a kind of spiritual combat, not in a hostile sense, but in recognition that living virtuously requires constant vigilance against our lower impulses and external pressures. Marcus Aurelius, who wrote his famous Meditations as a personal journal never intended for publication, began many days with a preparation for the challenges ahead. Begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil." This wasn't pessimism. It was preparation. By mentally rehearsing potential challenges, the Stoics practiced what modern psychologists call premeditation of adversity, visualizing difficulties before they arise so that you're not blindsided when they inevitably appear. Your morning is the optimal time for this mental preparation. When your mind is clear, before it becomes cluttered with incoming information and demands, you can fortify yourself against the day's potential setbacks. This practice doesn't mean expecting the worst. It means being ready for whatever comes, good or bad. It means recognizing that external events don't determine your well-being. Your interpretation of them does. The warrior doesn't train hoping there will never be a battle. They train precisely because they know the battle will come. Similarly, the Stoic doesn't pretend life will be free of challenges. They prepare for them in advance, especially during those first conscious moments of the day. Part 2. The practical Stoic morning. Waking with intention. The first moment of consciousness each day presents a choice that will ripple through all that follows. The Stoics advocated for immediate engagement with purpose rather than sluggish procrastination. Imagine the scene. Your alarm sounds, or perhaps you wake naturally with the first light. This moment, what modern psychologists call the moment of choice, determines much of what follows. The non-Stoic path is familiar to many of us. Hit snooze. Check social media. Scroll news headlines. React to whatever crisis, real or manufactured, dominates the day's discourse. In other words, immediately surrender your attention to external forces. The Stoic alternative begins with a simple but powerful redirection. Wake with a specific intention. Before your feet touch the floor, before you reach for any device, set a deliberate focus for the day. Epictetus advised his students, every day and night keep thoughts like these at hand. Write them, read them aloud, talk about them with yourself and others. Modern research confirms the wisdom of this approach. The brain operates differently in its first waking moments. The transition from theta waves during sleep to alpha waves during wakefulness represents a uniquely receptive state, what neuroscientists call a hypnopompic state, where suggestions and intentions can take deep root. A practical exercise. Before sleeping, write down the first thought you want to have upon waking. Place it where you'll see it immediately, perhaps on your nightstand or set as the first notification on your phone. Make this thought something aligned with Stoic virtue: courage, justice, wisdom, or moderation. When you wake, immediately engage with this intention before any other input reaches your consciousness. This isn't mere positive thinking. It's strategic mental programming, directing your mind's focus before the world attempts to direct it for you. The morning review. The Stoics were pioneers of structured self-reflection, a practice that finds its most powerful application in the morning hours. This isn't simply journaling. It's a systematic examination of one's character, choices, and principles. Seneca described a daily review process. When a light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now mine, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by. While Seneca practiced this review in the evening, modern practitioners often find power in conducting it during the morning as well, creating a cycle of continuous improvement. The morning review consists of these key elements. Reflection on yesterday. What virtues did you exhibit? Where did you fall short? Without self-condemnation but with honest assessment, examine your actions from the previous day. Contemplation of principles. Review the core Stoic principles that guide your life. Remind yourself of your values and commitments. Anticipation of challenges. What difficult situations might you face today? How will you respond in alignment with your principles? Setting intentions. Based on your reflection, set specific intentions for how you'll embody Stoic virtues throughout the coming day. This practice can be conducted through journaling, meditation, or simply quiet contemplation. The format matters less than the substance. A deliberate recalibration of your moral compass before engaging with the world. Research in behavioral psychology supports this approach. A study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that moral self-reflection in the morning significantly increased ethical behavior throughout the day, what researchers called the morning morality effect. By conducting a morning review, you're not just planning your day, you're strengthening your character, decision by decision, morning by morning. The philosophical cold plunge. Few practices embody Stoic principles as viscerally as the cold exposure that many modern practitioners have adopted. Whether through cold showers, ice baths, or winter swimming, voluntary exposure to cold represents a physical manifestation of Stoic teaching. While the ancient Stoics didn't explicitly prescribe cold water immersion, their philosophy centered on voluntary discomfort as a path to resilience. Seneca advised, "Set aside certain days on which you shall withdraw from your business and make yourself at home with the scantiest fare. Establish business relations with poverty." The cold plunge serves as the modern equivalent of voluntary hardship that trains both body and mind to distinguish between discomfort and harm, between reflexive aversion and reasoned choice. When you step into cold water, the body's immediate response is resistance, the gasp reflex, muscle tension, and the overwhelming urge to escape the discomfort. This mirrors our instinctive reactions to many of life's challenges. The Stoic approach is not to suppress this natural response, but to observe it, acknowledge it, and then make a reasoned choice to remain despite it. In doing so, you physically practice the central Stoic skill, choosing your response rather than being ruled by reflexive reactions. Modern research confirms significant benefits to this practice. Psychological resilience. Regular cold exposure has been shown to increase stress tolerance and reduce anxiety by training the sympathetic nervous system. Inflammatory response. Cold exposure activates brown adipose tissue and reduces inflammatory markers in the body. Cognitive alertness. The shock of cold triggers a release of norepinephrine, enhancing alertness and focus for hours afterward. A practical integration. Begin with 30 seconds of cold water at the end of your normal shower. Gradually extend this time as your capacity increases. Focus not on suppressing the discomfort, but on maintaining calm, controlled breathing despite it. This practice isn't about masochism. It's about expanding your capacity to function effectively under conditions your untrained self would find intolerable. A physical metaphor for the philosophical resilience that Stoicism cultivates. Movement as philosophy. The mind and body are not separate entities in Stoic philosophy. Physical discipline serves as both metaphor and method for philosophical development. Marcus Aurelius noted, "No citizen has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. What a disgrace it is for a man to grow old without ever seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." While the modern fitness industry often focuses on aesthetic outcomes, the Stoic approach to morning movement centers on functional capacity, discipline, and the mind-body connection. Morning movement serves multiple philosophical purposes. Demonstration of discipline. By moving your body when it would prefer comfort, you practice the essential Stoic virtue of self-mastery. Connection with nature. Physical exertion reconnects you with your biological nature, something the Stoics considered essential to living in accordance with nature's wisdom. Preparation for action. The body warmed and activated becomes a more effective instrument for virtuous action throughout the day. Mental clarity. Physical exertion, especially in the morning, has been shown to optimize cognition and emotional regulation. The specific form of movement matters less than its mindful execution. Whether through strength training, running, yoga, or calisthenics, the key is bringing philosophical awareness to physical practice. A practical approach. During your morning movement, select one Stoic principle to contemplate. For example, while performing challenging exercises, focus on the distinction between discomfort and harm, or reflect on how physical resistance builds capacity, just as life's obstacles build character. Modern research on exercise and neurochemistry supports this ancient wisdom. Morning physical activity increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which enhances neuroplasticity, learning, and emotional regulation, creating the optimal biological conditions for philosophical practice throughout the day. By integrating movement into your Stoic morning routine, You align body and mind toward the same purpose. The cultivation of virtue through disciplined practice. Strategic simplicity. The Stoics advocated for simplicity not as deprivation, but as liberation. By reducing unnecessary complexity, especially in the morning hours, you create space for what truly matters. Epictetus taught, if you seek tranquility, do less. Then he clarified, or more accurately, do what's essential in the requisite way, which brings a double satisfaction, to do less better. This principle finds particular power in the morning routine. By eliminating non-essential decisions and activities, you conserve willpower and attention for matters of consequence. Consider these practical applications. Decision minimization. Steve Jobs famously wore the same outfit daily, eliminating a decision that consumed mental energy. Prepare your morning necessities the night before. Clothes, food, materials for work or study. Digital simplicity. The Stoics had no smartphones, but they understood distraction. Seneca observed, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. Create a digital environment that supports focus rather than fragmenting attention, especially during morning hours. Environment design. Arrange your morning environment to support virtue rather than vice. Remove temptations and friction from beneficial activities. Make the virtuous choice the easy choice through thoughtful preparation. Routine consistency. The predictable routine isn't boring, it's liberating. By establishing fixed patterns for essential activities, you free mental resources for deeper contemplation and creative thought. Modern behavioral science confirms that willpower functions like a muscle that fatigues with use. By simplifying your morning through preparation and elimination of non-essential choices, you preserve this precious resource for meaningful decisions. The Stoic morning embraces strategic simplicity not as an aesthetic preference, but as a practical technology for living well. Each unnecessary complexity eliminated creates space for deeper engagement with what truly matters. Part 3. The morning mindset. Negative visualization. Among the most powerful Stoic practices is what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils or difficulties. This isn't pessimism, but rather a form of psychological inoculation. By deliberately contemplating potential challenges in the morning, you prepare your mind to face them with equanimity should they arise. This practice helps prevent the shock and emotional reactivity that often accompany unexpected difficulties. Seneca advised, he who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. A practical morning exercise in negative visualization. Specific anticipation. Consider your day ahead. What specific challenges might you face? A difficult conversation? A tedious task? Potential criticism of your work? Emotional rehearsal. Don't just intellectually acknowledge these possibilities. Emotionally rehearse them. How would it feel? What thoughts might arise? Response planning. Determine how you would ideally respond in alignment with Stoic virtues. What would courage look like in this situation? What would justice require? Perspective taking. Consider the situation from multiple perspectives, including those of others involved. What might motivate their actions? Return to gratitude. After this visualization, deliberately shift focus to appreciation that these difficulties remain hypothetical, at least for now. Modern psychology has validated this approach through techniques like stress inoculation training, which prepares individuals for challenges by exposing them to manageable levels of stress in controlled environments. By practicing negative visualization in your morning routine, you develop psychological antibodies against the day's potential hardships. When challenges arise, you meet them not as unexpected disasters, but as anticipated opportunities to practice virtue. The view from above. The Stoics regularly practiced cosmic perspective, what modern philosophers call the view from above. This mental exercise involves imaginatively stepping back from your immediate concerns to view them from progressively wider perspectives. Marcus Aurelius advised, survey the circling stars, as though you yourself were in mid-course with them. Often picture the changing and rechanging dance of the elements. Visions of this kind purge away the filth of life on the ground. This practice serves as a powerful antidote to the morning's potential anxieties and perceived urgencies. By expanding your perspective beyond immediate concerns, you recalibrate your emotional responses to life's challenges. A morning meditation on cosmic perspective. Begin by focusing on your immediate surroundings, the room, the house, or apartment. Expand to visualize your neighborhood, seeing yourself as one among many. Continue outward, your city, your country, the continent. Visualize Earth from space, seeing the planet as a whole. Expand further to our solar system, galaxy, and beyond. Now consider time, your day within your week, month, year, lifetime. Extend to historical time, centuries, millennia, cosmic time. From this expanded perspective, return to your present moment with refreshed awareness of both your insignificance and your connection to the whole. This practice serves several purposes. Anxiety reduction. Most daily concerns shrink when viewed from sufficient distance. Purpose clarification. What truly matters becomes clearer from an expanded perspective. Connection cultivation. You recognize your place within larger systems and communities. Death contemplation. The cosmic view naturally incorporates awareness of mortality, a key Stoic practice. Research in psychology supports this ancient practice. Experiences of vastness have been shown to reduce self-focused concern and increase prosocial behavior and well-being. By incorporating the view from above into your morning routine, you create psychological space between stimulus and response, enhancing your capacity for reasoned choice throughout the day. Memento mori, morning mortality awareness. Few practices are as characteristically Stoic as memento mori, the remembrance of death. While this might seem morbid to modern sensibilities, the Stoics understood that confronting mortality enhances life rather than diminishing it. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. Morning is particularly well-suited for mortality contemplation. Having survived the little death of sleep, you've been granted another day, a gift not guaranteed to anyone. A practical morning memento mori exercise. Upon waking, acknowledge, I may not see the evening, not with fear, but with heightened appreciation for the day ahead. Ask yourself, if today were my last, would I spend it as I've planned? This doesn't mean abandoning responsibilities for hedonism, but ensuring your priorities reflect your deepest values. Consider, what would I regret leaving undone or unsaid? Use this awareness to inform your actions today. Reflect on legacy. How will today's actions contribute to how I'll be remembered? Modern psychological research supports this approach. Studies on mortality salience show that thoughtful death awareness, as opposed to fearful death anxiety, increases commitment to meaningful goals and reduces concern with trivialities. The morning practice of memento mori doesn't diminish your day with morbidity. It infuses it with urgency and meaning. By remembering that your days are numbered, you ensure that each one counts. Amor fati, loving the morning as it is. The Stoic concept of amor fati, love of fate, represents perhaps their most profound teaching, and one particularly applicable to how we begin each day. Epictetus taught, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. This isn't passive resignation, but active embrace of reality as it presents itself, including all its imperfections and challenges. Morning often reveals the gap between ideals and reality. Perhaps you slept poorly. Perhaps weather disrupts your plans. Perhaps unexpected news arrives the moment you check your phone. The practice of amor fati transforms how you meet these circumstances. A practical morning approach to amor fati. Reality acceptance. When facing any morning circumstance, begin with complete acknowledgement of what is, without resistance or wishful thinking. Benefit finding. Ask yourself, how might this apparent obstacle serve me? Not through magical thinking, but through genuine curiosity about hidden advantages. Response choice. Recognize that while you didn't choose the circumstance, you always choose your response to it. Opportunity identification. Consider specifically how this situation offers unique opportunities to practice Stoic virtues. Courage in difficulty, moderation in success, wisdom in confusion, justice in conflict. Modern positive psychology has validated this approach through research on benefit finding and post-traumatic growth, demonstrating that those who look for value in challenges often discover it. By practicing a more fatty from the earliest moments of your day, you transform potential frustrations into opportunities. You create not the morning you might have fantasized about, but something potentially more valuable. The capacity to thrive within reality exactly as it is. Part 4. Integration with modern life. Technology and the Stoic morning. The Stoics lived without smartphones, social media, or email. Yet their philosophy offers profound guidance for navigating our hyper-connected world, particularly in how we begin our days. The average person now checks their phone within 10 minutes of waking, immediately surrendering their attention to external agendas. This practice would horrify the Stoics, who emphasized internal direction over external reaction. Seneca warned, "Many men, pursuing with unconscious haste the rewards of fame, have lost the powers of their body and mind by confessedly injurious toil." A Stoic approach to morning technology use. Delayed engagement. Create a technology buffer zone of at least 30 to 60 minutes after waking. Use this time for practices that strengthen your inner citadel before exposing it to external influences. Intentional consumption. When you do engage with technology, do so with clear intention rather than habitual scrolling. Ask, what specific information do I need to access? Then engage purposefully and disengage when complete. Attention triage. Distinguish between what demands your immediate attention and what can wait. Few digital notifications truly require instant response, despite their design suggesting otherwise. Technology as tool. View digital devices as tools to be used for your purposes rather than portals that use you for others' purposes. Configure them accordingly, disabling non-essential notifications and creating boundaries. Research on information hygiene supports this approach. Studies show that morning exposure to negative news significantly increases stress hormones and anxiety throughout the day, while delaying digital engagement improves focus, mood, and productivity. The Stoics would view our modern technology neither as inherently good nor evil, but rather as a preferred indifferent, potentially useful when employed with wisdom, potentially harmful when used without reflection. By establishing Stoic boundaries around morning technology use, you reclaim the day's most valuable hours for purposes aligned with your highest values, rather than surrendering them to the algorithmic priorities of distant corporations. The working professional's Stoic morning. Modern professional life creates unique challenges for morning routines. Early meetings, commuting pressures, and family responsibilities can seem to leave little room for philosophical practice. Yet the Stoics themselves were not hermits or full-time philosophers. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Seneca served as political advisor and managed vast wealth. Epictetus taught students daily. They developed their philosophy precisely to function within busy, demanding lives. Practical adaptations for the working professional. Time reclamation. Waking even 20 minutes earlier creates space for essential practices. This small sacrifice yields disproportionate benefits throughout the day. Commute transformation. Convert travel time into philosophical time through audio learning, Stoic texts and commentaries, or structured reflection. Workplace preparation. Create environmental triggers in your workspace that remind you of Stoic principles. A small quote card, desktop background, or symbolic object can serve as a philosophical anchor. Transition rituals. Develop brief practices 3 to 5 minutes that help you transition between home and work with intentionality rather than rushing from one context to another. Meeting preparation. Before professional interactions, take 60 seconds to set your intention. How will you embody virtue in this conversation? What principle will guide your contributions? The professional who begins the day with even abbreviated Stoic practices gains significant advantages. Research on emotional regulation shows that brief morning mindfulness significantly improves workplace performance, conflict management, and decision quality. The Stoic approach isn't about having unlimited morning time. It's about using whatever time you have with maximum philosophical intention. Even compressed, a Stoic morning routine creates a foundation of clarity and purpose that transforms professional performance. The parent's Stoic morning. Perhaps no role presents greater morning challenges than parenting. The needs of children often seem fundamentally at odds with philosophical practice. Yet rather than abandoning Stoic principles when facing these demands, parents can adapt them to family life. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." A parent's adaptation of Stoic morning principles. Preparatory waking. Rising before children even 15 minutes. Create space for brief centering practices that fundamentally change how you meet the day's first demands. Expectations management. Apply the dichotomy of control to family mornings. Children's behavior, spills, and unexpected delays are largely beyond your control. Your response to these events remains fully within it. Teaching through modeling. Children learn more from observation than instruction. By maintaining equanimity during morning challenges, you provide a living demonstration of philosophical principles. Shared practices. Age-appropriate philosophical activities can be integrated into family routines. Even young children can practice simple gratitude or intention setting. Microdoses of practice. Brief moments of philosophical awareness. Even 30 seconds of conscious breathing during a hectic morning help maintain your center. Research in developmental psychology supports this integrated approach. Children raised in homes where emotional regulation is both taught and modeled show significantly better outcomes in academic performance, social skills, and psychological well-being. The Stoic parent recognizes that the goal isn't a perfect, quiet morning of uninterrupted philosophical practice. Rather, bringing philosophical awareness to the beautiful chaos of family life, transforming potential frustrations into opportunities for growth, both for yourself and the young minds observing you. The Stoic morning reset. Even with the best intentions, morning routines falter. You oversleep. Work emergencies intrude. Family needs take precedence. The Stoic response to these disruptions is not self-recrimination, but adaptive resilience. Epictetus advised, "If you have assumed a character above your strength, you have both acted in this matter in an unbecoming way, and you have neglected that which you might have fulfilled." The concept of the morning reset acknowledges that the philosophical morning isn't necessarily tied to the day's first hours. It's a mindset that can be initiated whenever you consciously choose to begin your day with intention. Practical approaches to the morning reset. The midday renewal. If morning practices were missed, schedule a deliberate second morning during a break or transition point. Even 10 minutes of focused philosophical practice can recalibrate your day. The disruption protocol. When morning plans collapse, apply a brief, emergency version of key practices. Perhaps just 60 seconds of conscious breathing and intention setting before engaging with whatever crisis has emerged. The travel adaptation. Develop a minimal viable practice that can be performed anywhere, under any circumstances. This portable routine serves as your philosophical constant during periods of disruption. The next day integration. Rather than dwelling on a missed morning, extract the lesson it offers and apply it to tomorrow's planning. The Stoic views each setback as information for future improvement. Research on habit formation supports this flexible approach. Studies show that consistency matters more than perfection. Maintaining a practice at 70% of planned frequency yields most of the benefits of 100% adherence. The true test of Stoic morning practice isn't performance under ideal conditions, but adaptation under challenging ones. By developing reset protocols, you transform what might seem like failures into opportunities to practice the core Stoic virtue of resilience. Part 5. Advanced Stoic morning practices. Prosochē, the art of attention. Beyond specific morning activities lies a meta-practice the Stoics called prosochē, the art of attention itself. This continuous mindfulness serves as both a method and goal of Stoic practice. Pierre Hadot, the renowned philosopher and historian of Stoicism, described prosochē as continuous vigilance and presence of mind, self-consciousness which never sleeps, and a constant tension of the spirit. The morning offers unique conditions for developing this foundational skill. Attention calibration. Upon waking, Before engaging with any specific activity, take time to notice the quality of your attention itself. Is it scattered or focused, anxious or calm? Simply observing attention transforms it. Single tasking. During morning activities, whether showering, preparing food, or commuting, practice giving complete attention to one thing at a time. When attention wanders, gently return it to your chosen focus. Transition awareness. Notice the spaces between activities rather than moving automatically from one to the next. These transition moments offer opportunities to reset attention. Body scanning. Regularly check physical sensations as anchors for attention. Notice posture, tension, breathing patterns, and energy levels without judgment or immediate correction. Modern neuroscience confirms the importance of this practice. Research shows that attention regulation serves as the foundation for emotional regulation, decision quality, and learning capacity, making it perhaps the most valuable skill for overall life functioning. By developing prosochē from the earliest moments of your day, you cultivate not just a morning routine, but an entirely different relationship with your own consciousness, one characterized by choice rather than reactivity, clarity rather than confusion. Philosophical journaling frameworks. The Stoics were prolific writers, not for publication, but for personal clarity. Marcus Aurelius never intended his meditations to be read by others. They were working notes to himself. Morning journaling provides an unparalleled opportunity to clarify thought, examine assumptions, and set intentions. While many people journal casually, structured philosophical frameworks yield deeper insights. Advanced Stoic journaling frameworks for morning practice. The Epictetan Triangle. Divide your page into 3 sections labeled control, influence, and concern. Place each of today's priorities in its appropriate category. Then focus your energy accordingly. The Aurelian Review. Answer 3 questions. What am I doing with my life's energy today? Is this necessary? And how does this serve virtue? This framework cuts through busywork to essence. The Seneca Ledger. Create 2 columns, cost and benefit for your planned activities. This isn't merely financial accounting, but existential. What does each activity cost in terms of life energy, attention, and opportunity? The Virtue Matrix. List the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, as column headers. For key decisions or challenges ahead, consider how each virtue might inform your approach. Research in cognitive psychology supports this structured approach. Studies show that writing with specific frameworks activates different neural networks than free writing, leading to more actionable insights and behavioral change. Advanced philosophical journaling transforms vague morning reflection into precise cognitive training. Through regular practice, you develop not just clarity about the day ahead, but increasingly sophisticated philosophical reasoning that transfers to real-time challenges. Prosochē. Cultivating the will. At the core of Stoic philosophy lies the concept of prosochē, the capacity to choose our judgments and values independently of external circumstances. This faculty, which might be translated as moral will or the choosing faculty, represents our essential freedom. Epictetus placed this concept at the center of his teaching. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us. The morning offers unique conditions for strengthening this faculty. Value clarification. Before engaging with external inputs, review your core values. What principles will guide your choices today, regardless of what occurs? Judgment identification. Notice automatic judgments that arise about anticipated events. Are these judgments aligned with your philosophical commitments or reactive patterns? Response rehearsal. For key situations ahead, mentally rehearse responding from prosochē rather than from habit or impulse. Visualize choosing your response rather than merely reacting. Desire examination. Notice what you want from the day ahead. Distinguish between desires for externals, outcomes, recognition, pleasure, and desires for virtue, courage, justice, wisdom, moderation. Modern psychological research on implementation intentions supports this approach. Studies show that deciding in advance how you'll respond to specific triggers dramatically increases the likelihood of acting in alignment with your values when those situations arise. By cultivating prosochē each morning, You develop what might be called choice awareness, the capacity to insert philosophical reflection between stimulus and response, creating space for virtue where habit would otherwise prevail. Oikeiosis, expanding circles of concern. The Stoic concept of oikeiosis, often translated as appropriation or familiarization, describes a process by which we expand our circle of concern from self-interest to universal compassion. This development represents the ethical maturation that Stoic practice aims to cultivate. Hierarchal, a later Stoic philosopher, described this as concentric circles of concern: self, family, friends, community, humanity, and nature. The philosophical task is gradually drawing these circles closer to the center. Morning practice offers a structured opportunity to develop this capacity. Self-connection. Begin with awareness of your own state, physical, emotional, mental. This isn't selfish, but necessary. Proper care for others requires proper care for self. Loved ones' contemplation. Expand awareness to those closest to you. How might your actions today affect them? How might you contribute to their flourishing? Community consideration. Widen your circle further to colleagues, neighbors, and community members you'll encounter today. How will your choices affect their well-being? Humanity reflection. Consider your place within humanity as a whole. How do your planned actions connect to larger human concerns? What responsibility do you bear to the human project? Nature connection. Finally, expand to awareness of your place within the natural world. How do your choices affect the ecological systems that sustain all life? Modern research on compassion training validates this graduated approach. Studies show that systematic expansion of concern, rather than attempting immediate universal compassion, creates sustainable changes in both attitude and behavior. By practicing oikeiosis each morning, you methodically develop what the Stoics considered the highest virtue: the recognition that self-interest and common interest are ultimately inseparable. This awareness transforms not just how you begin your day, but how you move through the world. Philosophical dialogue with texts. The Stoics didn't merely read philosophical texts. They engaged with them as living conversations across time. This practice of philosophical dialogue with wisdom sources offers a powerful addition to the morning routine. Seneca advised, you should always read classic authors, and when you crave a change, fall back upon those whom you read before. Modern practitioners often approach ancient texts as historical artifacts rather than living wisdom. The advanced Stoic practice involves engaging with philosophical sources as genuine dialogue partners who speak directly to present concerns. A morning practice of philosophical dialogue. Curated selection. Maintain a collection of philosophical texts specifically chosen for morning reflection. These might include the Stoics Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, as well as complementary wisdom traditions. Intentional reading. Rather than sequential reading, open to passages that address your current philosophical questions or challenges. Read not for knowledge acquisition, but for dialogue with the author. Contemplative pause. After reading a passage, close the book and sit with its implications. What question does it raise for you? What assumption does it challenge? Where do you agree or disagree? Written response. Compose a brief written response to the passage, not as academic analysis, but as continued conversation. Marcus, you suggest X, but in my situation, why, I wonder? Practical application. Extract one specific action or perspective shift from this dialogue to carry into your day. Research on transformative reading practices supports this approach. Studies show that dialogic engagement with texts activates different neural pathways than informational reading, leading to deeper integration and behavioral change. Through regular morning dialogue with philosophical texts, you develop not just knowledge of Stoic principles, but a living relationship with the tradition, one that evolves with your own development and circumstances. Part 6. The Science of the Stoic Morning. Neuroplasticity and Morning Practice. Modern neuroscience has validated what the Stoics intuited. The morning hours offer unique conditions for shaping neural pathways, making it the optimal time for philosophical practice. The brain exhibits what scientists call heightened neuroplasticity upon waking. During sleep, the brain consolidates learning from the previous day, and in the transition to wakefulness, Neural networks are particularly receptive to new patterns. This creates what neuroscientists call the golden hour, a period when habitual patterns have not yet engaged and new pathways can be established with less resistance. Key neurobiological factors that support morning philosophical practice. Prefrontal activation. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, moral reasoning, and impulse control, shows increased activity and connectivity in the morning before becoming fatigued by decision-making throughout the day. Neurochemical environment. Morning features optimal levels of cortisol supporting alertness, combined with residual melatonin, supporting contemplative states, creating ideal conditions for focused philosophical reflection. Default mode reset. The brain's default mode network, which governs self-referential thinking, resets during sleep. Morning practice can redirect this network before habitual patterns reassert themselves. Unconscious processing. During sleep, the brain processes complex problems through unconscious mechanisms. Morning reflection capitalizes on insights generated during this period before they dissipate. Research from a UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center demonstrates that morning mindfulness practices yield significantly greater improvements in attention regulation than identical practices performed later in the day. The Stoics developed their morning practices through observation and experience. Modern neuroscience now explains why these practices work. They strategically leverage biological windows of opportunity for cognitive and emotional development. By aligning philosophical practice with these natural rhythms, you maximize the return on your investment of time and attention, creating more significant neural change with less effort than would be required later in the day. Habit formation and morning keystone habits. Beyond specific practices, the Stoic morning routine serves as what modern behavioral scientists call a keystone habit, a practice that naturally triggers positive cascading effects throughout other domains of life. Charles Duhigg, who popularized this concept in The Power Habit, describes keystone habits as small changes or habits that people introduce into their routines that unintentionally carry over into other aspects of their lives. The morning philosophical routine functions as perhaps the ultimate keystone habit because it shapes the mental frameworks through which all subsequent experiences are processed. Scientific insights on habit formation particularly relevant to Stoic morning practice. Trigger routine reward cycles. By linking philosophical practice to consistent morning triggers, waking, first light, first sip of water, you establish neural pathways that eventually make the practice automatic rather than effortful. Minimum viable commitment. Research shows that consistency matters more than duration. A daily 5-minute practice yields greater benefits than an occasional hour-long session. Begin with a commitment so small feels almost trivial. Identity-based habits. Frame the practice not as something you do, but as an expression of who you are. I am becoming the kind of person who begins each day with philosophical reflection. Environment design. Structure your physical morning environment to reduce friction for philosophical practice and increase friction for non-philosophical activities, particularly digital distractions. Habit stacking. Attach new philosophical practices to already established morning behaviors. If you already make coffee each morning, use the brewing time for specific reflection. Research from a European Journal of Social Psychology suggests that habit formation typically requires between 18 and 254 days, with a median of 66 days. This wide variation underscores the importance of patience and consistency rather than immediate results. The Stoic approach to morning habits isn't about willpower, but about strategic alignment with how habits actually form. By understanding these mechanisms, you transform philosophical aspiration into philosophical embodiment through the accumulated power of daily practice. Chronobiology and Stoic timing. The science of chronobiology, how biological rhythms affect functioning, offers additional insights that complement Stoic morning practices. While the Stoics emphasize the morning hours through observation and experience, modern research explains why this timing proves optimal for philosophical development. Key chronobiological factors relevant to morning philosophical practice. Cortisol awakening response. Within 30 to 45 minutes of waking, cortisol levels naturally spike, increasing alertness and cognitive function. This biological process creates an optimal window for focused philosophical reflection before the stresses of the day, create less productive cortisol patterns. Circadian executive function. Research from the Salk Institute demonstrates that executive function, including moral reasoning, impulse control, and decision quality, peaks in the morning for most people, regardless of chronotype, morning or evening preference. Ultradian rhythm leverage. Beyond the 24-hour circadian rhythm, humans experience 90 to 120-minute ultradian cycles throughout the day. The first such cycle after waking typically offers peak creative and analytical capacity, ideal for philosophical practice. Sleep inertia navigation. The transitional state between sleep and full wakefulness creates unique cognitive conditions where habitual patterns have not yet engaged, creating space for the introduction of philosophical frameworks. Decision fatigue prevention. Morning philosophical practice precedes the accumulation of decision fatigue that research shows progressively degrades judgment quality throughout the day. A Northwestern University study found that moral decision-making quality declined steadily throughout the day due to cognitive resource depletion, except in subjects who engaged in morning contemplative practices, who maintained consistent ethical reasoning capacity. The Stoic emphasis on morning practice wasn't arbitrary, but aligned with biological rhythms that modern science has now quantified. By timing philosophical practice to these natural windows of optimal cognitive function, you leverage biology rather than fighting it. This doesn't mean those with evening chronotypes cannot benefit from Stoic practice. Rather, it suggests adapting the timing to your personal biological rhythms while maintaining the principle of practicing before engagement with external demands. Part 7. The philosophy of evening. Preparing the soil. The Stoic evening routine. While our focus has been on morning practice, the Stoics understood that an effective morning begins the night before. The evening routine sets conditions for both physical rest and philosophical renewal upon waking. Seneca wrote, "I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This evening review served not just as retrospection, but as preparation for the day to come. Elements of a Stoic evening routine that supports morning practice. Daily review. Examine the day's actions and thoughts against your philosophical commitments. Where did you succeed? Where did you fall short? What patterns emerge? Gratitude practice. Identify specific moments, relationships, or circumstances for which you feel genuine appreciation. This practice counterbalances the brain's natural negativity bias. Next day preparation. Reduce morning friction by preparing physical needs: clothes, food, materials. More importantly, set clear philosophical intentions for the following morning. Digital sunset. Establish a consistent point each evening after which screens are eliminated. Research shows that blue light exposure suppresses melatonin, disrupting both sleep quality and the transition to wakefulness. Reading selection. Choose philosophical material for morning reflection. Rather than random selection, identify texts that address your current challenges or questions. Environment preparation. Arrange your morning environment to support philosophical practice. Remove potential distractions and position supportive elements prominently. Modern sleep research confirms the importance of these practices. A study from Harvard Medical School found that pre-sleep cognitive routines significantly improved both sleep quality and morning cognitive function. By treating the evening not merely as the end of one day, but as the foundation for the next morning, you create continuity in philosophical practice. This cyclical approach, evening reflection flowing into morning intention, mirrors the Stoic view of time as circular rather than purely linear. The philosophical rhythm, beyond morning and evening. While we focused on the morning hours as particularly valuable for philosophical practice, the ultimate Stoic goal is continuous awareness, philosophical engagement with every moment, not just designated practice periods. Epictetus taught, every hour focus your mind attentively on the performance of the task in hand, with dignity, human sympathy, benevolence, and freedom, and leave aside all other thoughts. You will achieve this if you perform each action as if it were your last. The morning routine serves not as an isolated practice, but as the foundation for this continuous philosophical awareness. It establishes patterns of thought and attention that gradually extend throughout the day. The development of philosophical rhythm. Interval training. Begin with morning practice. Then establish brief check-in moments throughout the day, perhaps on the hour or during transitions between activities. Trigger identification. Identify specific situations that typically provoke unphilosophical responses: stress, irritation, craving. Establish these as triggers for philosophical reflection rather than reactivity. Physical anchors. Link philosophical awareness to physical sensations or activities: the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sensation of breathing, the movement of walking. These embodied anchors provide continuous opportunities for returning to awareness. Environmental reminders. Place subtle philosophical prompts in your various environments: home, workplace, car, digital spaces. These serve as consistent calls to philosophical awareness. Cyclical reinforcement. Return to formal practice at key points throughout the day, reinforcing and deepening the morning's foundation. Research from the field of contemplative neuroscience supports this approach. Studies show that brief, frequent attention training creates more significant neural changes than longer, less frequent sessions. The Stoic morning doesn't exist in isolation, but as the cornerstone of a philosophical life. By establishing strong morning foundations and systematically extending awareness throughout the day, you gradually transform philosophical practice from a discrete activity into a continuous way of being. Part 8. Common obstacles and solutions. Resistance and the internal opponent. Even with the best intentions and knowledge, morning philosophical practice often meets powerful resistance. The Stoics understood this internal opposition, what some translations call the counter-self, the part of us that resists growth and virtue in favor of comfort and habit. Epictetus addressed this directly. If you wish to be a man of honor and worth, who is going to prevent you? You yourself and no one else. Modern psychological research confirms this phenomenon through concepts like cognitive dissonance and status quo bias, our tendency to resist change even when intellectually committed to it. Understanding and overcoming common forms of resistance. Comfort seeking. The mind generates compelling rationalizations for remaining in bed rather than rising for practice. Counter with predetermined commitments and environmental design that increases the friction of remaining in bed. All or nothing thinking. The belief that if you can't complete the full ideal routine, you might as well do nothing. Counter by establishing a minimum viable practice that feels almost trivially easy. Perhaps just 1 minute of philosophical reflection. Outcome impatience. Frustration when philosophical progress seems slow or unclear. Counter by focusing attention on the practice itself rather than its results. Trusting the process established by centuries of wisdom. Identity protection. Unconscious resistance to becoming the kind of person who lives philosophically because it threatens existing self-concept. Counter by gradually incorporating philosophical identity language. I am becoming someone who. Social comparison. Discouragement from comparing your practice with idealized versions seen in books or social media. Counter by remembering that all practitioners struggle. The difference lies in persistence despite struggle. Research from the field of habit formation suggests that anticipating and planning for specific forms of resistance dramatically increases success rates. The psychological technique of mental contrasting with implementation intentions has been shown to triple commitment follow-through. The Stoic approach to resistance isn't elimination, but philosophical engagement, viewing each instance of resistance as an opportunity to practice the very virtues your morning routine aims to develop. In this way, even resistance itself becomes part of the practice rather than an obstacle to it. Consistency without rigidity. Perhaps the most common pitfall in morning philosophical practice is oscillation between inconsistency and rigid perfectionism. The Stoic path navigates between these extremes, valuing consistency while embracing adaptation. Marcus Aurelius advised, if you seek tranquility, do less. Then he clarified, or more accurately, do what's essential in the requisite way, which brings a double satisfaction. To do less better. Philosophical consistency without rigidity. Core and peripheral practices. Distinguish between non-negotiable core practices, perhaps 5 to 10 minutes of philosophical reflection, and peripheral practices that can vary with circumstances. Commit absolutely to the core while allowing flexibility in the periphery. Situational adaptation. Develop modified versions of your routine for different contexts. Travel days, illness, extraordinary work demands, family needs. Having these adaptations prepared in advance prevents abandoning practice entirely. Progress tracking. Maintain a simple record of practice consistency rather than practice perfection. Many practitioners find that the four-quadrant Seinfeld method, marking completed days on a calendar, provides powerful visual motivation. Forgiveness protocol. Establish in advance how you'll respond to inevitable missed days. Rather than self-criticism, use the Stoic approach of dispassionate analysis. What led to the miss? What adjustment might prevent recurrence? Community accountability. Share your commitment with others practicing similar routines. Research shows that social accountability dramatically increases consistency without requiring rigid adherence. A study from the University College London found that habit formation success correlated most strongly not with perfect adherence, but with how quickly practitioners resume their habit following inevitable disruptions. The Stoic approach to consistency mirrors their broader philosophy. We cannot control all circumstances, but we can control our response to them. By preparing adaptable approaches to varying conditions, you maintain philosophical continuity even when specific practices must change. Overcoming specific morning challenges. Beyond general resistance, specific morning challenges often derail philosophical practice. Addressing these common obstacles directly increases your chances of sustainable progress. Sleep disruption. Challenge. Poor sleep quality or quantity undermines morning alertness and motivation. Stoic approach. Rather than viewing sleep disruption as preventing philosophical practice, incorporate it into practice itself. What virtues might this circumstance call forth? Perhaps patience with fatigue or courage to practice despite suboptimal conditions. Practical solution. Develop a modified low-energy morning routine that requires less cognitive demand while maintaining philosophical essence. Simple breathing practice and reading one paragraph from a Stoic text might replace more demanding exercises. Time compression. Challenge. External demands, early meetings, family needs. Create time pressure that squeezes out philosophical practice. Stoic approach. Apply the dichotomy of control. You cannot always control demands on your time, but you can control how you allocate the time you have, however limited. Practical solution. Develop time-tiered practices. A 15-minute ideal routine, a 5-minute compressed routine, and a 1-minute emergency routine. Having these prepared in advance prevents all-or-nothing thinking. Digital magnetism. Challenge. The powerful pull of devices, particularly in the morning when important messages may have arrived overnight. Stoic approach. Practice recognizing the difference between perceived urgency and actual importance. Most digital notifications create artificial urgency around matters of limited importance. Practical solution. Create physical distance between yourself and devices during morning practice. For many, charging phones outside the bedroom eliminates the first thing digital check that derails intention. Household chaos. Challenge. Family needs, particularly with children, create unpredictable morning environments unconducive to philosophical practice. Stoic approach. Incorporate others into your philosophical framework rather than seeing them as obstacles to it. How might service to family express rather than interrupt philosophical development? Practical solution. Identify micro-practices that can be performed even amid activity. Brief attention to breathing while preparing breakfast. Philosophical questions integrated into family conversation. Virtuous responses to inevitable morning friction. Motivation fluctuation. Challenge. Natural variation in motivation and enthusiasm for philosophical practice over time. Stoic approach. Recognize that motivation follows action more reliably than action follows motivation. The Stoics emphasized practice regardless of feeling, knowing that appropriate feeling often follows. Practical solution. On low motivation days, commit to just beginning the practice, perhaps just 1 minute, without requiring completion. This foot-in-the-door technique often leads to completing the full practice once begun. Research on habit formation shows that anticipating specific obstacles and planning responses in advance, a technique called implementation intentions, increases success rates by 300 to 400% compared to simple goal setting. By developing specific strategies for your personal morning challenges, you transform potential derailments into opportunities for deepening practice. The Stoic doesn't expect perfect conditions, but rather develops the capacity to practice effectively under all conditions. Part 9. The Lifetime Practice. Stages of Philosophical Development. The Stoic morning routine isn't merely a set of techniques, but a lifetime journey of philosophical development. Understanding the typical stages of this journey helps maintain perspective when progress seems slow or uncertain. Drawing from both ancient Stoic teachings and modern developmental psychology, we can identify common stages in philosophical practice. Technique acquisition, months 1 to 3. Primary focus, learning and establishing basic practices. Common experience, initial enthusiasm followed by friction when novelty fades. Key challenge, consistency despite fluctuating motivation. Success metric, regular practice rather than visible results. Habit consolidation, months 3 to 12. Primary focus, transforming deliberate practice into automatic routine. Common experience, decreasing effort required to maintain practice. Key challenge, balancing discipline with kindness toward oneself. Success metric, practice resilience during disruptions and stress. Philosophical integration, years 1 to 3. Primary focus, connecting morning practice to daily life situations. Common experience, increasing awareness of gaps between theory and practice. Key challenge, applying philosophical frameworks in real-time challenges. Success metric, growing alignment between values and automatic responses. Identity transformation, years 3 to 7. Primary focus, embodying philosophical principles rather than merely practicing them. Common experience, significant shifts in relationship to external events. Key challenge, reconciling philosophical growth with existing relationships and contexts. Success metric, others spontaneously noticing changes in your response patterns. Wisdom cultivation, years 7+. Primary focus, refining subtle aspects of awareness and response. Common experience, decreasing need for formal structure as philosophy becomes natural. Key challenge, maintaining beginner's mind despite growing expertise. Success metric, capacity to adapt philosophical practice to changing life circumstances. Research on expertise development supports this stage model. Studies show that significant cognitive behavioral change typically requires 1,000 to 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, depending on domain complexity. By recognizing these developmental stages, you gain perspective on your current challenges and future direction. The Stoic morning routine isn't a destination, but a vehicle, one that evolves as you evolve, serving your development at each stage of the journey. Philosophical progress markers. Unlike many pursuits, philosophical development lacks obvious external metrics of progress. This can lead to uncertainty about whether your morning practice is working. The Stoics addressed this challenge by identifying subtle but reliable indicators of philosophical growth. Drawing from both ancient writings and modern psychological research, we can identify key markers that indicate deepening philosophical integration. Response delay, early stage, automatic reactivity to triggering events. Middle stage, noticing reactivity as it occurs. Advanced stage, space between stimulus and response. Mastery, spontaneous philosophical response without effort. Emotional resilience, early stage, emotions dominate experience. Middle stage, awareness of emotions without immediate identification. Advanced stage, ability to feel fully while maintaining perspective. Mastery, emotions inform wisdom rather than driving behavior. Desire transformation. Early stage, strong attachment to external outcomes. Middle stage, recognition of attachment as it occurs. Advanced stage, genuine preference without attachment. Mastery, focus on virtuous action regardless of outcome. Future orientation. Early stage, anxiety or fantasy about future scenarios. Middle stage, present awareness with periodic future concern. Advanced stage, present engagement with appropriate future preparation. Mastery. Full presence with natural wisdom about future implications. Perspective taking. Early stage. Locked in personal viewpoint. Middle stage. Intellectual understanding of other perspectives. Advanced stage. Genuine appreciation of multiple viewpoints. Mastery. Spontaneous compassion for all perspectives. Modern psychological research supports these markers through constructs like psychological flexibility, cognitive reappraisal capacity, and decentering, all of which show reliable development through contemplative practices similar to Stoic exercises. Rather than seeking dramatic transformations, look for these subtle shifts in how you engage with daily experience. Progress in philosophy manifests not in what happens to you, but in how you meet what happens. A distinction that begins with how you meet each morning. The greater purpose, beyond personal effectiveness. While we've examined the Stoic morning routine primarily through the lens of personal development, the Stoics themselves held a broader vision. Their ultimate aim wasn't merely personal effectiveness, but contribution to the human community. Hierarchals, describing the Stoic ethical project, used the metaphor of concentric circles. Self at the center, then family, friends, community, and finally all humanity. The philosophical task involved gradually pulling these circles toward the center, treating those in outer circles with the same care as those in inner ones. This broader purpose gives morning practice its deepest meaning. Ethics beyond self-improvement. The Stoic morning routine isn't merely about personal optimization, but about developing capacities that serve others. Wisdom shared, justice enacted. Courage that inspires. Moderation that creates space for others' needs. Philosophy as cultural contribution. Your individual practice contributes to collective wisdom by demonstrating philosophical principles in action. As more individuals cultivate philosophical awareness, cultural patterns shift toward greater wisdom. Intergenerational transmission. The morning practices you develop may influence others, particularly younger generations who observe your example. What you cultivate now may bear fruit in lives beyond your own. Environmental stewardship. The Stoic concept of living according to nature has profound ecological implications. Morning practices that align with natural rhythms and foster awareness of interconnection support sustainable relationship with the natural world. Civilizational renewal. At the broadest level, the revival of philosophical practice represents a potential antidote to cultural challenges like meaninglessness, polarization, and short-term thinking that threaten social cohesion. Research from positive psychology supports this perspective through concepts like eudaimonic well-being, fulfillment that comes through contribution, and meaning rather than hedonic pleasure or personal success. By situating your morning practice within this larger context, you transform what might otherwise become self-absorbed optimization into genuine philosophical development, one that benefits not just yourself, but ripples outward to all whose lives you touch. Conclusion. Beginning the journey. The morning arrives again tomorrow, as it has for every human who has ever lived, and as it will until the final day of our species. This perpetual cycle, darkness giving way to light, offers a daily invitation to philosophical renewal. The Stoics recognize something modern science has confirmed. How you meet the morning largely determines how you meet life itself. Not through magical thinking or superficial productivity hacks, but through the systematic cultivation of human capacities that transcend circumstance. Whether you begin with a single practice or embrace a comprehensive routine, what matters most is the philosophical intention you bring to those first waking moments. Will you surrender them to external demands and digital distraction, or will you claim them as your sovereignty? The one time guaranteed to be yours before the world makes its claims? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you rise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This simple awareness, the recognition of life's gift renewed each dawn, provides the foundation for all that follows. The path of the Stoic morning isn't one of rigid perfectionism, but a philosophical engagement with reality exactly as it presents itself. Some mornings will flow with ease. Others will challenge every intention. All offer opportunities to practice the virtues that define a life well lived. Begin where you are, with whatever time you have, under whatever circumstances life has delivered. The philosophical morning awaits not in some idealized future, but in tomorrow's first conscious breath. Win the morning. Win the day not through dominance over external events, but through the cultivation of that inner citadel which stands undefeated regardless of what unfolds around it. The sun rises. The choice is yours. Resources for further exploration. Ancient texts. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Personal journals of the philosopher emperor, offering practical Stoic guidance for daily life. Discourses and Enchiridion by Epictetus. Teachings from the former slave who became one of history's greatest philosophical teachers. Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. Correspondence offering practical wisdom from the Roman statesman and playwright. On the Shortness of Life by Seneca. Essay exploring the Stoic relationship with time and mortality. Lives of the Eminent Philosophers by Diogenes Laertius. Historical accounts of the early Stoics, including Zeno and Chrysippus. Modern interpretations. The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. Daily Meditations drawing from Stoic wisdom. How to be a Stoic by Massimo Pigliucci. Contemporary application of ancient principles to modern challenges. A Guide to the Good Life. The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy by William B. Irvine. Accessible Introduction to Stoic Practice for Contemporary Readers. Stoicism and the Art of Happiness by Donald Robertson. Psychological Perspective on Stoic Practices and Their Benefits. The Inner Citadel. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius by Pierre Haddad. Scholarly exploration of Marcus Aurelius's philosophical approach. Scientific resources. The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal. Science-based approaches to self-regulation that complement Stoic practices. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Research on habit formation applicable to establishing philosophical routines. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Scientific exploration of sleep's importance, with implications for morning practice. The Neuroscience of Mindfulness by Dr. Stan Rodsky. Research on how contemplative practices change brain function. Peak Performance by Brad Stulberg and Steve Magnus. Science-based approaches to sustainable high performance aligned with natural rhythms. Practical applications. The Morning Mind by Dr. Robert Carter. Specific techniques for optimizing morning cognitive function. The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. While more contemporary in approach, offers practical structures for early morning practice. Mindfulness in Plain English by Banti Hinepala Gunaratana. Clear instruction in attention training complementary to Stoic practice. Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Strategies for reclaiming attention from technological distraction. The Power of Full Engagement by Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz. Energy management principles that support sustainable practice. Online communities. r/Stoicism. Reddit community discussing practical applications of Stoic philosophy. Modern Stoicism, modernstoicism.com. Organization offering courses and resources on contemporary Stoic practice. The Daily Stoic Community. Online group focused on applying Stoic principles to everyday challenges. Stoic Fellowship. Network connecting local Stoic groups worldwide for discussion and practice. The Walled Garden Philosophy Community with regular Stoic-focused discussions and practices.